Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to the second installment of two of questions and answers. Prior to the break, we had two callers, a day sister who called in and our day brother, a regular day brother, who called in. Sister called in to ask the question about, not frogs in the throats, that was something else, about the plucking of the eyebrows, and I spoke generally about the impact society, particularly social media, is having on what ladies should look like, because they are fooled by cameras and filters and all the rest of it, and excessive amount of makeup to make them think that that's how they've got to be accepted by society. No, a woman, why is it that society doesn't put those same conditions on men? You know, I'm sat here with no makeup on whatsoever. Why can I get away with to sit in front of you with no makeup, on my face whatsoever? How can I get away with it? Yet if a woman was to be presenting, why is there an expectation on her that she should have lipstick, blusher, eye stuff, face, cheek stuff? She has to feel that she has to pluck her eyebrows, that she has to look pretty. Why don't I feel under the same obligation to look handsome? Yes, I know I'm naturally handsome. But what I'm saying is, why isn't there an expectation on me as a man to go out of my way to look attractive to the audience? And yet, why is that expectation put on a woman? And then you ask the question, well, who is putting that expectation on a woman? Who wants a woman to look attractive? A man does. A woman doesn't want a woman to look attractive. In fact, she would probably get jealous if a woman looks more attractive and beautiful than her. So it's the man who wants the lady to look attractive. And the way he sold that to the woman is that he makes the woman think she's doing it for herself rather than doing it for somebody else, And I always think, well, how could a woman do something like that for herself? Have you ever walked in high heels? Where a woman walks in a ridiculous footwear just to look attractive, where literally you're going to fall over, when if you put your feet inside a high heel, it's not even, it's not even natural. The damage it does to one's calves and legs, and you're walking like that. It's just ridiculous. But there's that expectation is upon a woman to do that. So, as Muslims, we have been made free, especially our Muslim women have been made free from the eyes of the men and the demands of the men, apart from obviously those who are our husbands, that's a different thing altogether, because the reason why a woman is dressing attractively there is for a separate thing altogether. And we're not past the 9 p.m. watershed, so I can't go and explain that to you, but I'm sure, the ishara is sufficient for you. So that aside, so I hope that comprehensive answers made people think a little bit and, scratch their heads and think, actually, yeah, there is this expectation upon women. And women, kind of without even realizing it, get caught onto the end of the hook and follow it without even realizing it. And yet they think they're independent then from men. Khair. So the next thing is, are the kissing of thumbs sunnah during adhan? They're not considered as sunnah. There's no sound narration. There is no practice found amongst the companions of it going on. This would be something which would be discussed in the books of fiqh. There's no discussion of it in the books of fiqh, especially of us of the Hanafi school. There's no conversation on that note. So this is just something which is an act that's done, and then assume that it is part of the sunnah. So one shouldn't adopt those practices. The third question was that about the prayer of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. Now there's ikhtilaf in all of this. There's a difference of views that did the Anbiya pray like the Muslims pray? And one view, which is a fairly strong view, is that yes, they did. You see, for example, the description of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam when he is praying, and it describes him bowing, it describes him falling on his face in prostration. And when you look at the Christian prayer, and when you look at the Jewish prayer, you don't see a resemblance or that description fitting the Jewish and the Christian prayer, but you do see it fitting well with the Muslim prayer, where we go into ruku and then we go into sajda. Whether the recitation in this prayer was the same, that I'm sure there is some level of agreement that that would not have been the case, because A, languages were different, and B, obviously the method, the prayer that was given, if you look at the durood, for example, that was given to the Prophet ﷺ, then that's something which is very specific. Even the companions asked about this durood and he explained it to them. Surah Al-Fatiha was obviously revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, so that would not have existed prior to the revelation to him. But when you look at thana, Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika wa tabarak asmuka wa ta'ala jadduka wa la ilaha ghayruk, then those words you would find similar in the other faiths. Ta'awuz was obviously something that was specific to the Muslims, but again there would be some kind of variant of seeking refuge in Allah, or seeking refuge in God. Bismillah, in the name of the Lord. So again, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So again, slightly different, but the concept would have existed. So the recitation would have been different. The method would have been different. The number of prayers, it is reported that there were 2 prayers. The 5 prayers did not exist. So the Anbiya prayed twice. So the 5 prayers only came about with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he went on Mi'raj. So when you gather all these views, then that's the Nachur, as I call it. That's the Mukhtasar of those views that I've put in front of you. There are other views which say no, the prayer was different. There were some similarities, but generally different, because each Nabi was given his own prayer. He was given his own Sharia. We know that because when we saw Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, when he returned back, when his family returned to him, then they all bowed to him out of respect and honor. Now we know that in our Sharia there's no bowing permitted, but in the Sharia of Yusuf alayhi salam, bowing was permitted. So that shows clearly that the Sharia was different. We also know that for Yaqub alayhi salam, certain things were made impermissible that were made permissible for Muslims. We also see, for example, that the war booty was illegal. What used to happen in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, before the time of the Prophet ﷺ, is the war booty. What would happen is that the fire would come from the heavens and destroy it. Now, obviously, what we find is for the Muslims, it was allowed to be taken. Anyway, we'll carry on with that discussion. We have another caller waiting. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear caller.
I want to ask a question.
Yeah, sure, sister. Ask away.
It's regarding this COVID vaccination. They have offered small kids like 3 years old onward, and they're offering there's a spray kind of a thing for kids. There's a nasal spray, but it has got gelatin in it. So I was wondering if this is okay for the kids to take this spray, or do they have then otherwise they have the normal injection kind of a thing, which mostly mothers don't want their kids to have. So I was wondering if you could answer that.
I will do. Jazakallah khair, my dear sister.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. So I think when it comes to the nasal spray, I've not come across any. I've not gone out my way to look, but I've not come across any information that the actual COVID vaccine can be administered via the nose. I will get my producer to be checking that whilst I'm talking about it. I'm not sure that can be administered via the nose. I know that the flu vaccine, fluenza and whatever, that there is a vaccine that can be inserted. So maybe based on that, analogizing on that there is something or that's been produced, because as we know, children don't really like injections. They're quite painful, and obviously the child plays up, and it's dangerous when the child's moving their arm and you're trying to stick a small epidemic needle inside their arm. So, but gelatin, obviously, and this is, if we go back to the flu vaccine, I know that was the case there, then obviously for Muslims, gelatin is impermissible. Now, from the vaccines that we've seen that they have been produced so far, the ones which are administered via injection, then they have ensured, because they know obviously that a sizable population on the planet are Muslims, and also a sizable population on the planet are vegetarians. So they know that they're going to get a lot of resistance if they make a vaccine which can't be administered to everybody. So the vaccines which adults have been taking for the last year and a half don't have any items of an animal nature. So what we'll do is we'll get a particular answer on this one in more detail. But in short, I would say that if it has gelatin in it, then one shouldn't be applying that, okay? Because there will be alternatives, and as I said, I would be very surprised that there aren't alternatives being offered. But again, we've got to, well, maybe not tomorrow, but we'll get the I'll look into this. I will look into this personally to see what options are available so that we can recommend a particular option. But if you go to speak to your GP and say to your GP that obviously as Muslims, we can't administer anything, which they already know this anyway, because obviously if your GP, or you've been with your family GP for some time, they will know as a Muslim what you can and can't take. And there are other drugs that are out there. There are other medicines that are out there that have gelatin in it. For example, certain capsules that have gelatin on their casing, with the ones that we take, we swallow, and then obviously the active medicine gets into our stomach first before the case is destroyed by the acid in our stomach, and then the drug is administered via the stomach rather than being impacted in the mouth. Then they will know that. So when you speak to your GP and when you're booking any COVID vaccine for your children, then you would say that obviously we are Muslims, we cannot engage in any form of gelatin or animal or anything else of that nature. Please give us a one which has an alternative. As I said, I would be very surprised if an alternative does not exist. I would be very surprised at that. But I could look into it particularly, but I think that general answer would suffice for you, not just for the COVID vaccine, but also for the flu vaccine and for any medicine for that matter. Whenever your GP is going to administer it to you, they should already know this, because you would have already told them as a Muslim, I cannot do X, Y, Z. And they will then say, okay, as I'm going to administer this to you. Remind them if you need to, that say, does this contain anything, of animal nature, animal substance? And if they say, no, it doesn't, then there's no problem. And if it does, then obviously that's something that you need to refrain from and get some alternative. But as I said, we'll look into this specifically to see what variants vaccines exist, and therefore that can be a clearer choice. And inshallah, next week, because I think tomorrow is not going to be a live show. Next week, probably on Wednesday, I would hope to have the answer for you, and then I can discuss it in more detail live to you on the show, sister. So if you can tune in, or anybody else for that matter. But I hope that response, that explain to your GP, as I said, not just for this COVID vaccine, but for flu vaccines, because they do give flu vaccines to children as well, and especially elderly and people with underlying health issues. This time of the year, they give flu vaccines, and they are alternatives. There are ones with gelatin in them, and there are also some without gelatin in them. So you ask for one without gelatin in it, so that that can be administered to you, and then at least, or to your child. So at least then they are staying within the Sharia confines. In certain circumstances, when there is no alternative medicine available, then you can check with a mufti, and they will say, well, okay, in this circumstance, because there is no alternative, and because this is going to have a direct impact on your health, it's going to have an impact on your well-being, then they can give permissibility. Well, that would be a case by case, and also be in circumstances where there is no alternative. As I don't know with the COVID vaccine if an alternative exists or doesn't exist for children, then on that particular point, please tune in again on Wednesday, and I will hopefully have that research done, and then I can present that to you myself. Okay, Jazakumullah khairan. So let's get a last couple of questions on here, so that at least we can deal with what remains. Okay, I think there was one last question on here that remains. Yes, here's a question. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Is it fine to donate Islamic books, example Hadith Fiqh, to a British book public library? Okay. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yeah, absolutely. There's no harm in donating Islamic books to a British public library. And I guess if you give it with the intention of dawah, if you give it with the intention of spreading Islam, if you give it with the intention that Muslims will benefit from it, then there will be ajr for you as well. Okay, Jazakumullah khairan. So that deals with all the questions that I've got on my gents forum. Yesterday, I'd already dealt with my questions on the ladies forum. So alhamdulillah, those forums are up to date. We had our few questions today. One was about the plucking of the eyebrows, and by extension, the women beautifying themselves and going to great lengths to beautify themselves to such an extent to cause harm and permanent change to their bodies. And also we talked about the understanding or the notion that the kissing of the thumbs is a sunnah. And then obviously we spoke about the prayer of the Anbiya that came before Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we just finished now talking about the COVID vaccine for children particularly, but also generally speaking about medication and the use of haram substances in medication and what the Sharia speaks about with regards to that. So alhamdulillah, another good day. May Allah accept our efforts. The in tray is now empty, which is the way we like it. And unless somebody wants to quickly get a question in, we've got a few minutes. So if you do have a burning question, get it in now. As I said, we probably won't have a live show tomorrow. So you would have to wait till next week then for that burning question to be answered. One point I will, whilst I'm waiting, the number to call is 01274 214 299. Is obviously we've got Halloween around the corner. And many people will now, as we've talked about with the sister earlier about the plucking of the eyebrows, that's, with time, we're slowly losing our identity. We're losing those things which identified us as Muslims, and we're adopting those things which didn't identify us as Muslims. Halloween is something which has no substance within the Sharia. It has no, virtue in it. It has no benefit in it. In fact, it's detrimental because it's practicing of the sort of cultures and pagan cultures of the past. We don't have time now because it's only a couple of minutes. I suggest you look into the origins of Halloween and what was the origins of Halloween and what was it based on and why did it, become a cultural issue here, particularly within the West, and how when we start adopting those sorts of practices which have no space for us in our religion. Remember, when it's religious practices or religious celebrations or religious festivals, then we cannot join with other faiths in those religious celebrations, religious festivals, religious moments. This is a religious festival. So we cannot partake in that. Even if we say, well, it's lost that element, like some people will argue, Christmas is no longer religious now. It's just a bit of a laugh. It's just a bit of a whatever. Go and speak to Christians, those who do go to Mass on the Christmas Eve, those who do go to church on Christmas Day, and say to them that this has no relevance in Christianity. And they'll say, excuse me, you don't know what you're talking about. This has absolute relevance in Christianity. Just because some people don't value it as such, that doesn't mean anything. Like, for example, Eid. If somebody celebrates on Eid and says, well, I'm only doing it because it's a thing to do because family get together, I'm not really doing it for the religious reasons, does that change that Eid is no longer a religious festival? Of course it doesn't. Eid will continue to be a religious festival. Just because some people only think Eid is, they only do Eid because it means family getting together. They don't care about the religious element of it. They just think it's a holiday where all of us can get together. Fine, I enjoy that. Okay? I have no interest in the religion aspect. That position they adopt does not change the religious aspect of Eid. Eid will continue to be a religious celebration for Muslims, whether Muslims think of it like that or not. Similarly, Christmas will continue to be that, and similarly, pagan cultures will continue to be that. They don't change just because because now they've been commercialized in the West, and we buy into that commercialization where we're buying Halloween outfits, going to Halloween parties, doing trick or treats or whatever else, just because we say, well, it's a bit of a good time. Anyway, on that note, we are now nearing the end of today's show. Jazakumullah khair for tuning in, and I also appreciate all the people who have phoned in. Jazakumullah khairan. I hope that my answers have given you some ease and comfort in moving forward and dealing with your life and dealing with others around them. Looks like that frog's returning. Maybe he's crawled back up my throat and he's ready for payback. So it's going to be frog 2. Anyway, take care of yourself. See you soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.